Okay, gonna call the finance meeting to order for February. And first thing up is I need a motion to accept the January 7th minutes. So moved by Don Ward. Or are you turning on something? I don't know what. Second by James Griffith. John Rosell. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Okay, real property, you are up first there, Laura.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Okay, in the beginning of your packet, you should have a listing of the monthly report for me to, that I submit on any corrections of tax bills or refunds that have been approved by myself through our office. You can look at the listing. We just had a couple exemption issues. Nothing really major out there. If you want to take a look at those. And we did have one refund. Unfortunately, it didn't line up correctly on the sheet that you guys have. But if you look down to Putnam Boland, that was a refund. That was a Board of Assessment review change that never got updated on the computer. But that refund of $210 that kind of got shifted over on your print. So that's there. Okay. The next thing that I have is a resolution to correct the tax roll. I can approve on my own based on a resolution that was passed back in 2015, corrections up to $1,500. This one is more than that. This was a parcel that was on our tax sale auction a year ago. And what happened was the assessor never put it into roll section 8 to make it wholly exempt. Seeing that it's a Washington County property, we usually do that. So that parcel in the town of Easton should not have had any taxes levied on it, and there actually was a village relevy. So that village relevy has to be written off. It is exempt, at this point for tax sale purposes, but there was a village bill that was issued. It's more than the $1,500, so that's why this resolution to correct the tax roll.
Okay, so I need a motion to remove $2,117.96. Moved by Lester. Do I have a second? Don Ward. Any discussion on that? Dana F.
Brian, unrelated to this, but this packet just came through about an hour ago, and I can't do two things at one time, Zoom and read my email for the packet. Is there a way that we can see these resolutions off to the side of the screen here that sometimes we do? Plus, I think the public can watch the Zoom, and I don't think the public can see the resolutions that we get emailed to us. So can we have them off to the side so we can see what we're talking about? I'm trying to do both. I'm trying to pull up my email on my phone so I can see that while we're talking, but the public can't do this.
Do we have that ability?
You can give it a try. It does take your screen away, that's all.
Right. Yeah.
We'll see what we can do, but.
I guess that he's got a point that the public can't see him on YouTube. I guess that's.
I'm not cold.
Is this not here, Dave? Okay.
I would keep going unless he wants to.
Okay. So all in favor on this resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, we're carried. That it,
Okay.
Laura?
Nope, there were a couple other things I wanted to bring to the board's attention. I did have a few people this year who back in September attempted to make a payment on their school taxes. They thought they had done that through banking, money removed from one bank account and transferred over to another. That was not successful on their end. I did have a couple people ask for corrected tax bill on their school relevy because of the situation that they went through. Unfortunately, that is not a correctable error on my end. I cannot remove penalties on a relevy that was not paid. They attempted to pay it, but the money was put back into their account prior to even the end of the penalty-free period. I also had one lady who had actually bounced the check and thought since she wrote the check, she should have had the penalties go away. Unfortunately, the payment was not received prior to the end of the cycle. The bills were re-levied and put on the town and county tax bill. It has happened in other areas too, but I just wanted to bring it to your attention that if they're doing an online payment through their banking institute, they should, the people need to really follow through and make sure the payment is received by the collecting agency, be it the school, the town and county, the village, whoever it may be, just to make sure that those funds are transferred over either via check. The bank is writing a check for them and they're doing online banking along that lines. So I just wanted to put it out there. If you have any constituents who, make sure that that payment has been received by the tax collector, being the school or town and county, and that, their money has been taken out of their account. In these instances, the money was never taken out of the person's account. So, their bill was never paid. Kind of an unfortunate situation. I've spoken with both of them and have relayed the information that I can't remove the penalties, even though they did attempt to make a payment. But in both instances, the money was put back into or never removed type thing from their account within that penalty-free period. So I just wanted to bring it to everybody's attention.
What month did that occur in, Laura?
That was some school bill, people trying to pay their school taxes. So that was back in September when they were trying to pay a school tax bill. They tried to do it through their lending institution.
But they have the ability to pay, right? And I'm gonna bring in Al
Yes.
here, because Al, they have the ability to pay that when those close, they have an opportunity to pay them before certain time in December or January, right?
So Brian, just to have you understand, these people, you know how you can go into your online banking and issue payments through your online bill pay? What happens is then a processing center cuts a check for you, sends that out to your vendor. These people did that process in September, and because they didn't follow through with the school, when they didn't realize until they got their January bill that the receipt didn't go through. So there's, they didn't follow through, but they didn't know
They
until
really
January.
didn't follow through, yeah.
Right,
They didn't
yeah.
know until January.
Yeah, so the money was never taken out of their accounts. I mean, they even showed me an account where the money was taken out and then put right back in. So, I mean, there was no, money was never paid to so I just wanted to bring it to everybody's attention on that. It's not just, it's happened in a couple other counties because it was listed on our listserv. Is this really a correctable error? No, it's not, so it's not just here. It has happened in a couple other places throughout New York State. So, and I did want to talk one quick point. We did talk about the aged exemptions where the governor had passed legislation and then he made it a law where people don't need to renew their aged exemption going forward for this year, for this cycle. So that the senior citizens are not going out of their houses, taking their exemption renewals down to your local town assessors to hand things in. That does not need to be done. We've already gone over this once. Now we're looking at legislation for the upcoming cycle. And as you know, that doesn't get passed until April 1st. One of the new legislations going forward is anybody that is currently receiving the basic exemption, basic star exemption on their tax bill. In the year that they turn 65, normally what happens is they are now entitled to the enhanced star exemption. What has happened in the past is they would just get an application to the local assessor that would be approved. They would now be getting their enhanced exemption on their tax bill, on their school tax bill going forward. Legislation going forward is making these people go into the check program. So as soon as somebody turns 65, or requiring people to go into the check program, as soon as they turn 65, they won't have an exemption on their bill anymore. Now they're going to get a enhanced credit check in the mail. So it's going to be a little different. Not a large majority of people probably would be affected by this. It's only the people that are turning 65. There is information out there. The assessors, your town assessors, are well aware of everything that is going on with this program. So I just kind of wanted to put that out there. The state wants to take over the STAR program. The state wants everybody to go to the credit check program. They don't want to have exemptions on tax bills. This is just their push, another change to the STAR legislation. And on top of that, a second change to the STAR legislation is anybody that lives in mobile home parks, instead of receiving the exemption for the mobile home park owner off the school tax bills, those people will now be given STAR credit checks going forward, whether basic or enhanced. That's something we've kind of been recommending here through with some of the local people that live in mobile home parks. That way they're getting their money, they're getting their credit check themselves. It's not going, the credit isn't going to the mobile home park. I went to Whitehall one day and with the Whitehall assessor, and we went through the whole trailer park there, or mobile home park, excuse me, and informed all the people they should be getting these checks. They need to do the applications. And a lot of the other assessors are working on getting these people turned over so that the homeowner, the mobile homeowner, is receiving the credit check instead of the exemption going through to the landowner on the tax bills, and then being distributed throughout their monthly rental fees. So just a couple STAR updates that are coming through the legislation. I would imagine both of those will pass. You shouldn't hear too much on your end. Your assessors will be hearing things on that. But I do believe that the assessors, New York State Assessors Association, are supporting both of these changes. So I just want to give you information on those.
And that is up for debate yet in the legislature, or is it a done deal?
Nope. It's in the executive budget, in the briefing book, and they may not pass it, but I can pretty much guarantee you they will, because the New York State Department of Tax and Finance, they want to take over the STAR program. That's what they've been trying to do for some time. So both of these are probably done deals, especially since the Assessors Association, the ones that have to initiate all these changes on the town level, are supporting this. So.
Okay, so people that are 65 and above right now are still going to get it the same way they've been getting it right along?
Yep. If you're already getting an enhanced exemption on your school tax bill, you will continue to get the enhanced exemption. But the year that you turn 65, then you'll have to go to the credit check. You can remain in the exemption program, but you'll only get the benefit of a basic. So, I mean, most people will want to go to the credit check and get the, almost double the value of savings dollar amounts.
So it really affects everybody under 65. It's just 1 year at a time.
Eventually.
Is everybody that's 64 getting ready to turn?
Right. So they take it all away.
That's wonderful.
That's all I have. Thank you very much for your time.
Hey, thanks, Laura.
Yep.
Okay, Treasurer, we're ready for you.
I have some questions for Laura.
Oh, go ahead, Dana.
Laura,
Yes, Dan.
I know that if you are late on your town and county tax bill, the second you're late is a 5% penalty. You mentioned penalty on the school tax.
No.
Is that a 5% penalty?
It's not a 5% penalty. When you're late on your school tax for the first month, there's a penalty incurred. And the rollover, Al can go, he does the rollover penalty. For your town and county, it's 1% if you don't pay prior to February 2nd. And then the second one is the 2% penalty.
1% per month, and the 5% doesn't come on until April 1st.
Right, but all right, so I call my definition of late might not be your definition, but there is a 5% penalty. But is it also for school tax?
So school tax has the interest that rolls on at 1%. But if you're unpaid as of December 1st, there's a 7% re-levy fee that we charge to go onto the town and county bill.
Oh, so it's more than,
Yes, sir.
wow. Thank you,
An
Thanks, Dan.
incentive to pay your taxes.
if you can.
And not only that, and that's what I was referring to earlier, is there is an opportunity if those people that tried to pay in September had realized in November, they still had a chance to pay online before Al took them over and added them to the town or to the real property tax. So there is a window, but if you aren't even paying attention, you'd think you'd notice if you had a few $1,000s extra in your account that you thought wouldn't be there. So that's a hard one to swallow. I mean, there is certain accountability to people in paying their bills too. And I think you'd know if the money didn't leave. And if they had made that call to Laura in November, I think that could have been avoided. So that's just too bad, but that's, it's the way the system works. But if, in the future, hopefully they will make that call in November instead of waiting until January and trying to get money refunded that's not possible to be refunded.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Al. Yeah, go ahead, Laura.
It is an unfortunate situation. One of the pluses is when your town and county collectors are doing their collection period, at a certain point, they're going to send out delinquency. A lot of them send out delinquency letters. So saying, you know, you haven't paid your taxes, you need to hurry up and get them paid because I have to turn them back in April. The school doesn't send out a delinquent letter. They're not required by law, but the town, you know, most of your towns do that. So the people, when it comes to the town and county collections, they're getting their tax bill, hopefully. But if they don't, then they're getting a letter saying, by the way, you haven't paid your taxes yet. Please make sure you make your payment to us soon. So, it's just one of those things that happens on the town level. That is a great thing. I know some of you may charge $1 or $2 for that letter on top of it, but it is a great reminder for your people if they haven't paid their bill that, yep, you need to get your payment in. So thank you.
Yeah, Sue Clary?
Laura, have you had a lot of, is it just Salem that seems to have a problem getting the mail to the people on time? I mean, we're still getting return taxes.
So your town, we've had a problem for a few years with your town postal delivery.
Okay,
Um,
but I, the first year I felt like it couldn't be that bad. This year I'm thinking it's ridiculous.
yeah,
And I'm getting to the point where I think we need to put it in Glens Falls box or something.
right. Well, with COVID, the mail was affected back a while ago, but we've had problems in your town in the past with postal delivery. It happens. Some of your postmasters have been there for 20 years and they know everybody that lives in town, and some of them, don't like to forward. They don't. They want a correct address. It's all gone through machines or whatnot. So there has been some issues. I know in your town that we've had some issues with postal, because we also do the 911 addresses and we contact them when there's changes, and sometimes those things do not get updated correctly. So
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Okay, Al, we're ready for your treasurer report.
And just real quick, Supervisor Clary, I can tell you that some of the most angry phone calls that I get in my office over the past 8 years in this role is the whoever wrote the real property tax law actually took the time to write in there that failure to receive your bill does not exempt you from the interest and penalties. It is the most angry phone call that I consistently get, because somebody doesn't get their bill or doesn't get their bill on time. I don't have any discretion in applying that interest charge to them. And I got to tell you, it is the hardest phone call to take, because I understand what they're saying and there's absolutely nothing I can do about it.
I agree with you. I'm
Yeah.
getting those too.
It's unfortunate, but it is what it is right now.
Okay,
barring any change in the legislation.
thank you.
Okay, moving on. Unfortunately for you all, you're probably going to hear from me longer today than normal, and I apologize in advance. The beginning of your packet, which I hope you got a chance to either print or at least have available to you. The first sales tax for this year actually begins in February. Oh, there we go. You'll see that it's about $184,000 down from the same time last year. But I do need to remind you that that's $126,000, 126,990 of that is actually the 2020 distressed hospital draw. So when you add that back in, apples to apples, it's not 184, but it's still a little bit down from this time last year. You'll notice that the sheet looks a little bit different on the bottom. And if you go to the second page of the report, you'll see last year's completed sales tax collection. What I've worked with Brian on is up at the top of the sheet, we've changed what the adopted versus the amended is. and shown you the resolutions that amended it. And then when you go down to the bottom, we've given you some information about this is what the actual collection was, and tried to show you the impact of the AIM-related payments to the towns and the impact of the 7% sales tax sharing to the towns. So we really wanted to be able to give you some numbers that you haven't in the past seen, but we're hoping that they're meaningful and useful to you, especially if these sales tax intercepts continue. You'll never be able to get a true apples to apples metrics of how you're doing as a county. So showing you the actual number, but then backing into what that number was before all of this nonsense began, I think is useful, because when we start talking about trends, is the trend up, is the trend down? Well, the trend may look like it's down, but it's down because of things that weren't in place 3 years ago. So Brian and I have decided that giving you some of those metrics hopefully is useful for you, even if it's not today, when we get into budget season and you start being more concerned about trends and where we're going tomorrow. Hopefully you find that information useful. Is there anything you wanted to add to that, Brian? Because you were involved in that process as well. So.
No, I think it's a great job. It helps me a lot to see the changes, and I think everybody else in due time, once they get used to it, they'll see the use of it too.
Okay, thanks. The third page in the report is, of course, one of the most common questions I get from the supervisors is about these, the hospital payments and the AIM payments versus AIM-related payments. And if any of you have had the chance to look at the proposed governor's budget, and Brian can jump in anytime he feels comfortable, we've really, one of the concerns currently for us is the proposal is for the governor to take all of the AIM payments and make them AIM-related payments. If you remember last year, all but 5 of the municipalities in the county went to AIM-related payments. And then 5 of them that were over 2% of their budget continued to be funded by the state as AIM payments. The 2021-22 state fiscal plan budget from the governor proposes taking all of the AIM payments, reducing them 20% and making everything AIM-related. So we wanted to show you the impact, the possible impact, if that budget actually patches as proposed. It takes all of the $587,000 worth of AIM and AIM-related payments, reducing it 20% and making it a complete county responsibility, intercepted through our sales tax. And so those 3 boxes on the side, the first one is showing you what's going to happen if this budget passes and everything goes to AIM-related this fall, and the impact on next year as well. Now, Brian reminded me that the hospital draw was only supposed to be for 2 years, because I've become a bit of a cynic in believing what I'm told from Albany these days. I gave you a 3rd box to show you the impact if the distressed hospital goes on for a 3rd year. So I really wanted you to have some of these numbers that, that $618,000 in that first box, that's real money that's being intercepted out of our sales tax. And that's, for Washington County, that's not a small amount. I don't think our tax cap was much more than that number. So it really is significant when you talk about our budget planning, the impact of those sales tax intercepts that we have no control over, and they were done through a budget process, not even through a normal legislative process, which is concerning, because now he's got AIM payments, AIM-related payments, distressed hospital. It leads you to ask, what's next? The first 2 he put through with very little resistance. So what's to stop him from saying, hey, the community colleges keep telling me that they're underfunded, so we're gonna start bridging that gap through county sales tax intercept. I don't know there's any way to stop it, because the first 2 were so successful without much resistance at all.
Yeah, so on top of that, just to let you know, reducing the county and village, or the town and village AIM to AIM-related and when they're decreased by 20%, when that's all on us, is actually $176,000 increase to the county, just those things.
Yep.
Which is hard to believe, but it's because the numbers are so big in certain areas. So even with the 20% decrease, it's an increase to us. And so making that all up, and we did make it up this year with the towns. We expect to make it up for the villages in March. The interesting part here is the 20%, he talks about reconciling by the end of March, so 20% is just 15. So I don't know if he's going to do that with AIM from last year or not, but if he at least gives 15% of that back would be helpful. But when he talks about the 20% reduction in AIM next year, that has nothing to do with the 5% that he's talking about reducing going forward. So we won't know until he passes the budget where that's going to come out at. But like I said, doing a budget when his revenues are all over the board and there's nothing to nail down, it really makes budgets meaningless. So you just have to be twice as conservative to cover for what that high number might be. Matt Hicks?
Hey, so Al, for towns going forward, bottom line is we should budget the 80% number going forward indefinitely, right?
That would
That's
be
the new
my,
normal.
it would be my recommendation, Mr. Hicks.
So even though for 2021, we may have budgeted the 100% number, it's more than likely we're going to get the 80% number. And certainly going forward, we should figure the 80% number to be the new normal.
Right, and that's where I was going to go next. I've just discussed with you the impact on the county, but because we're a board of supervisors, there's 17 of you here representing your towns as well, and there's actually a double impact to you at the town level. So not only do you face the potential of your AIM funding being reduced by 20%, which you have already passed your budgets for this year. So how do you go back and try to redo something you've already done? For some of you, that 20% reduction, if you didn't plan for it, could be a problem. The secondary unintended consequence of this AIM payment being switched to AIM related through the sales tax intercept, it's going to reduce the amount of sales tax the county gets, which reduces the 7% distribution to the towns. So not only are you going to get less of AIM money from the state, you're going to get less of sales tax distribution from the county. So you get hit twice from the same implementation.
So we're going to get 7% of the net, not 7% of the gross, and they'll never tell us what the gross number is anyway.
Right.
Great.
Any more good information you'd like?
Well, Al said he was going to be a cloud today.
And on the bottom of the sheet was an interesting question that Mr. Campbell asked me. So the county, by law, is supposed to get 3% of the sales tax. With the AIM intercept, Brian was curious, well, with them taking that money from us, what did we actually get? So I showed you with last year's receipts, you ended up getting 2.96%. And if the AIM payments go through in 2021, the way they're proposed, that number is going to drop again. So you're not even getting your statutory 3% of sales tax. It's really, it's one of the worst plans I've seen to shift the costs to the county. I mean, I've listened with great admiration to Mr. Hankey for years talk about unfunded mandates. This brings that to a whole nother level. I mean, this is really, this is a significant impact on a county like ours. And the next sheet in the packet is just a recap, just a reminder of what the AIM distribution actually looks like by municipality. And then I gave you a recap from 1988 to 2020 of the sales tax receipts. This is a sheet that I haven't shared in a long time, but I thought with everything going on, it's not a bad time to kind of throw this back out there again. We have 5 new supervisors that, haven't ever seen this before. And I'm not sure that, all of you have, even some of you that have seen it may not have kept it or really paid much attention to it. But because sales tax is such a big issue these days, I thought it was a good time to share with you again, where we were, where we are. We still saw in 2019 and 20, we still saw some decent growth, which I hope, I would love to see it continue. But again, we won't have a great measurement of what the real growth is because the net receipts that we get continue to dwindle based on these intercepts. The following page is just a graphic portrayal of that sales tax history that shows, budget to actual. And that's really trying to show that during the budget process, they do try to be, semi-conservative in that, at least we're not budgeting 25 million and getting 21. We're not doing that. So, I'm okay if they budget 21 and we get 22 because that appropriated fund balance, your goal at the end of the day is get that down to zero. So it just kind of shows the past budgetary practices and how they've impacted us based on the actual collections. Excuse me. The next three sheets you may have already got, but I thought it was worth sharing with you again. That was NISAC showed us the impact on the motor fuel sales taxes that were collected. And if anybody's gone to the pumps in the past couple of weeks, I think this chart would look very different 6 months from now because it looks like we're in another increasing market on the gas prices. So it'll be interesting to see where that number goes. The next part of the report is a piece that Mr. Haff asked for. And at the end of it, I'm going to ask how you want to continue moving forward because I think it's probably important to have some version of the report in each year's or each month's finance committee. But for this first presentation, I'm going to give you a full detailed report. And then you can tell me, yes, we'd like this one, or hey, and for, monthly, we just want a summary report, and you can give us the detail twice a year. We'll talk about that at the end, and I'm open to suggestions and comments. But let me walk you through this. I'm going to take them a project at a time unless you have any concerns or questions before we get started. The first one in the report is capital project number 78, which is the County Route 113 bridge. This is one that we had borrowed money on to cash flow. That project is almost done, and we'll be able to take that money that we borrowed for Route 113 and be able to use those same funds now that they've been repaid by Marshallese to fund our Church Street Bridge and Shushan Bridge, because you'll see a resolution later today. Church Street came in at like 4.4 million, I think is my memory. So we've got some significant cash flows coming, this bridge season too. This bridge is just about done. I would expect that sometime in 2021, you'll see a recommendation from Deb Donahue to go ahead and close this project down. So this one's, other than some, last minute buttoning up of, construction inspection and sidewalks and approaches or whatever I'm not an engineer, but whatever they do at the end of a project, they're just about wrapped up on this one, and this one will close soon. The next project is the County Route 81 bridge over the Poultney River. This is a bridge that we are a 50% contributor with the state of Vermont. The state of Vermont is actually the lead agency, and then we pay half of the construction costs, but we also get the Marshallese funding on this one. And remember, Marshallese funding is normally 80% federal, 15% state, and 5% local. There are a few preservation projects that come in at 80% federal, 20% county with no state, but for the most part, they are 80, 15, 20. Capital Project 82, the Fire Training Center. That's going to be a project that at some point this year will start in Mr. Ward's Public Safety Committee, but I'd like to have a further conversation about this one. This project was created back in 2005 with, Warren and Washington counties had some grand plans about a fire training center. It originally was going to be on the ACC campus. And as many of you know, it ended up on a property in Queensbury up by the Volkswagen dealership, if you've ever been to the facility. They built a couple of training modules and everything kind of just stopped. So I'm not sure what the current plan is for expansion, if any, or where we're going next with that facility. But at this point, we're not going to build out anymore and it's just maintenance, we should talk about closing this project and just making the maintenance part of the general fund budget. So we can have some further conversations about this, because that conversation obviously is going to take longer than I want to tie up today. And
Yeah,
it should really start in public safety.
Just a little history there, Al. This was a little before I got on the board, that's for certain, but it was always told to me from when I first became budget officer that this thing only was working on grant funding, and because they had some huge plans to make this bigger, better, and include everybody, and it got to the point where I think fire companies were so far away they couldn't have their apparatus that far from home base in case there was a fire. And so then the grant funding dried up too, and the whole thing came to a standstill. So we'll let it go to Mr. Ward's committee, but that's kind of where it was. That grant funding was all it was ever going to be put in that, and that was the way I believe the counties came to an agreement, was that they weren't going to put their own money in it. It would be grant funded. So with that being said, that's kind of where it got left. And when money started flowing all towards Homeland Security, this one here seemed to really dry up and go away.
Right. And last time I was involved with this, it seemed like we bought some shipping containers that were still sitting at the old Ciba-Geigy plant and hadn't been placed yet. So I don't know what the current status of that facility is. But like you said, we'll go back to public safety with it and try to see what we're going to do as a county moving forward.
Okay.
Capital Project 113 is a project for Homeland Security grants. The Department of Homeland Security required us to start tracking their federal grant awards separately. And rather than open up a whole separate bank account and have a whole separate set of books to track their grant funds, we decided that the cleanest way would just be to open a capital project so that they would have their own separate accounting, and that satisfied the Department of Homeland Security's requirements. So this is one of those projects that you'll just see continue to grow. This will just continue to get bigger and bigger, because every year there's an award, we just add a new line for that award. But this is really just the accounting mechanism to track the Homeland Security grants awards that go. It's split partially between the sheriff's office and partially between public safety. And you see them once a year, and we recognize them, and it goes out in the project. The nice thing about being out in the project is because those grants cross years, those budgets automatically cross years because of the way the projects are structured. So it was really an efficient way to meet our requirements to continue that grant funding, to continue that funding to flow properly.
Hey, Al,
Yes, sir.
can we go back to the first project? I want to be able to understand your presentation better, and I'm just
Sure.
picking that one. It's the first one. You got your budget, what we'd actually set up for a budget on that 113 bridge. And
Yes, sir.
the actuals, what it came in at, I understand that. And then the budget balance is the difference between the two. But now, like with that one there, and most of it being outside funding, whether state or federal, if you close that account out, what does that mean to us? What number? Is there going to be money that comes back to us? Or is that just go back to the state and the federal government? Or or have we not been fully financed yet? So I just wondering, when you close it out, what does that mean to us?
So Marshelli funding is a reimbursement-based project, Dan. So we only get money from the state and feds after we spend it. So we wouldn't owe them any money. But what you could have is your 5% local share. You send your whole 5% out to the project in the beginning. So if the project comes in under budget, your 5% share would be reduced and that money would be returned to county road. So if you sent out 200,000 and it ended up only being 150, 50,000 would come back to county road.
Okay, so our 5% was based off the 6,600,000.
Yes, sir.
And so if that comes in really at that number and the savings of 1.2 million, then okay, you calculate out what that 5% would have been, and that's what we get back.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Got it.
Capital Project 114, it's another one of those projects that will continue to grow because I don't see it stopping anytime soon. This is the accounting for the long-term control plan at the sewer district. They're getting ready to kick off. They're calling it phase 2, but for us, it's kind of phase 3. As you remember, the sewer district was under a consent order from New York State DEC that becomes a permit issue for Joe Brilling and his team. So they have about $25 million worth of repairs and replacements that need to happen over the next, 10, 15 years, whatever, to keep them compliant with DEC and their permit requirements. They're getting ready to kick off another, I don't know if it's 6, I don't have the number right in front of me, but there's another phase getting ready to start. So this is where we track all the costs to that long-term control plan. This one was all borrowing up until the end of 2019. They received a $3.7 million grant. So they were able to offset some of these costs by $3.7 million. The borrowing, remember, the borrowing to pay for this comes directly from the district's ad valorem. So they raise a little over $500,000 a year in tax revenue. That revenue is reserved specifically for debt service. So this debt to fund this project comes directly from the district users. So this is where we account for that program. When all said and done, it's going to be 25 or 26 million all in by the time we're done with this one. County Route 118 is a bridge preservation project. You can see the 3 bridges that were awarded in there. I'd have to check with Deb, but I think we're pretty much at the end of this one as well. You'll probably see something in the near future to get this one closed down. I think these were all done. They might have even been done before COVID. I'm not entirely sure, but we'll be talking to Deb about which ones of these projects can be closed and when. But it would be my guess that this one is probably going to be sometime this year. Capital project number 121 was an engineering study at the Sewer District 1, which is the IDA park. That is the Warren and Washington IDA's park up by the airport. That was budgeted 83. They spent 35, and I don't think they're going to spend any more. You're probably going to see a closure for this project coming up pretty soon, because I think they're actually moving into another phase in this project with their agreements with the town of Kingsbury and all of that going on. I think you're going to see more. You may see a new capital project that has something to do with replacement and rehabilitation of the lines currently there, but you probably see this one be closed down in the near future. Capital project 122 was the project that we opened to fund our local share of the ACC NSTEM building. Those costs I'll check with Anne Marie, but they should be pretty much wrapped up there now. The building's done, the furnishings and equipment's done to the best of my knowledge. This is a ban that we took to cash flow our local share. It will be part of the March renewal, but it will be converted to long-term. If you remember Brian talking to you last month. And if all the costs are done, once this goes long-term, we can actually close this project because that long-term debt service becomes a general fund item. Capital project 123 is the public safety microwave and equipment project. This is a place where Tim and Glenn wanted us to be able to track multiple years worth of SICG grant awards that they're using. If you can remember, they're upgrading and replacing their microwave units for their communications. It's a little above my pay grade what they're doing, but I know that they're improving the way that the signals bounce around the towers is my memory, and how each of the emergency services units are able to talk to each other. And I think there was even a redundancy thing where if one tower went down, it could still bounce off another tower. I'm speaking out of my scope, obviously, but this project was to track those SIG awards for those repair and replacements. Capital Project 124 was opened for the Fort Edward Sewer District 1A project, which was a repair and replacement of water and sewer lines along Little Canada, McCrae Street, and into Irving Tissue in the village of Fort Edward. Those costs have grown to exceed the available grant money. So that project is currently in jeopardy of moving forward. We're working with the sewer district to see, is it completely off the table, or is some smaller version gonna be done? Because he's still, as part of that long-term control plan that we spoke about earlier, the I&I separation, the stormwater separation up in Little Canada along McCrae Street, that's still significant. That's still significant for the amount of stuff that goes to the plant. So if they can get that stormwater separation, there might be still some level of that project that's worth doing. But that's again for Mr. Brilling to kick around and bring back to public safety or public works, excuse me. But that project right now is open. For how long, I don't know, and at what level, I don't know. Some of the grant awards could be in jeopardy if we don't do something soon, but we are working with the Regional Planning Board, with Laura Oswald, and with Mr. Brilling to continue to try to move that ball forward, because it's definitely an important project, but the money's got to come from somewhere. Page 4 of 5, it takes up the complete page. This one I did a little bit different because this project is the one that kind of brought this presentation out to be necessary. So this capital project is actually for the capital plan. So I think sometimes we get confused when we say capital plan and capital project are actually two different conversations. This is the capital project for the capital plan. And the capital plan is our 5-year list of needs that we started presenting to you a couple years ago. So what I did differently on this one, the top part of the report shows you what's funded and what their current expenses and budget balances are. What I added to this, the second half, I've entitled pending funding. Those are the items that are in the 5-year plan that you have not yet funded. We'll be talking about 1 or 2 of them later in this meeting, but I wanted you to not only see what I didn't want to stop with just what was funded now. I really wanted to give you a picture of what else was out there that you haven't yet funded, because I think that gives you a better optics of what that plan actually is. So you can see what we've done, what we're doing, and more importantly, what we want to do. So I hope that this presentation is useful to you all and has some value, because again, I think that the capital plan without showing the future needs is a mistake. I think you need to see not just the present, but the future. Is there questions on this one before we go forward?
Yes, I got a question.
Yes, Dan.
Now, when you've got contingency, that's the total of everything above it, correct?
Nope. That's money that's in the project that has not been allocated yet.
So what is the total of all those above it? Is it more or less than that?
It's
on the very bottom.
Oh, at the very bottom. Okay, I see it down there now. So, wow.
So it's about 1.856 million in projects that are already funded.
That they are funded in the sense that we have the money to do those or move ahead.
Yes, sir.
And any one of those, if in the pending funding, if any one of those became more important, you could rob it from above, but then they would be ending up not being funded, correct?
No, what you could do is you have that $936,000 is basically money that you have not yet allocated. So if you wanted to fund one of those projects below, you could tap into that 936.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Brian?
Yep.
Al?
Yes, sir.
I see a lot of IT things here. You got SAN replacement, Pulse VPN, data center. above it, you had capital project for IT. Are we mixing those out? Are we separating them out? Should they be in IT instead of in this?
We separated those out, Dana, going forward. This is where they were originally, so they're just being completed. These are projects that are already underway for the most part. So they're just getting completed there, but in the future, that's why the ones going forward aren't IT. Because originally they were in the capital plan. They were funded in the capital plan, and they're gonna be finished there. So going forward, there won't be any of those. But right now, they're actually underway. They're actually happening and the money's there for them.
Okay, but we're always gonna have a 5-year plan. So we then would have 2 different projects, both related to a 5-year plan?
There's not another IT project, Mr. Heff.
Right, IT, if you remember, Dana, just last month or the month before, we gave them their own capital reserve, so their plan, because it doesn't really fit the rules of our capital plan. So they've got their own cash reserve, so they can roll money over, or we can add it separately in the budget to make sure those things keep happening separate from whatever DPW and Buildings and Grounds has.
So Mr. Heff, when this project was first set up, everything that was in the capital plan was in this project. When I started seeing what kinds of things were being bought by the IT department, they didn't really rise to the level of a capital need. So if you look at the very bottom of this project, you see that $96,000 that says interfund transfer to general fund?
Right.
That's where we stopped budgeting IT projects in here and sent them back to be spent out of Terry's general fund budget. And now in the normal budget process, things that are in their 5-year plan for IT, you'll actually see in Terry's general fund request, not in this project. So this project will be specific pretty much to Matt Jones and Deb Donahue.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Moving on.
A question.
Oh, go ahead, Mr. Rozell.
We have 50,000 for the Gordon Avenue parking lot improvements.
Yes, sir.
And then on the pending funding, we have that 50,000 again.
Yeah, that's a mistake. If you remember, we amended the budget last time and took that back out because it was already funded, and we left it funded.
Right. So that was a miscommunication between me and Brian. Brian thinks that we should leave it in, and he's correct. So it shouldn't be in the pending down below.
Okay.
It actually is funded. Sorry about that.
Good question. At least you're paying attention. I like to see that.
Capital Project 126 is the County Route 61 bridge over the Battenkill. And it looks like that project is still in the design phase. I haven't seen any of the Marshelli supplementals yet moving it into construction. But I imagine that would be fairly soon. This is the Shushan Bridge, correct? I think.
Yes.
Yep. So we'll be talking more about this later. Stay tuned. So this one is, we're in the design phase. There's some things going on with that project. Hopefully we'll be moving into construction soon. Capital Project 127 is the Church Street Bridge. You have a resolution in your packet today that's going to move that into the construction phase and start down that path. So it'll be construction starting summer of 2021, unless I hear different. Capital Project 128 is the County Road Paving Preservation Project. If you'll remember, I gave a recommendation to the board. This is a lot like the Emergency Services Homeland Security grants. Deb Donahue's been very successful in getting some AGFTC grant money for some of these smaller road and bridge preservation projects. You remember Doc Johnson is an example of one from last year. They're ones that she can't always complete in a year. Sometimes they cross years and stuff. So rather than having to come back to the board and reappropriate funds all the time, by making these smaller AGFTC grant awards a capital project, the budgets will automatically roll forward, and then you can get a true accounting rather than seeing one fiscal year at a time. You can actually see the true cost. So if Doc Johnson goes over 3 years, by being in a capital project, you'll see a full 3-year accounting in one snapshot without having to do 3 separate income statements. So it really, it's a lot more transparent for the board, and I think it's a lot more efficient for Deb to let the project just continue from start to finish. That's all of the currently active projects that we have. Was there any questions?
That's a nice report, very, very in-depth.
And the end of my packet is just your budget to actual. I only gave you where we are with last year. It's still way too early in 2021 to give you any meaningful report for 2021. You're used to that. I don't really start until around April giving you current year information because it's so miscued in the first quarter of the year that it's not really meaningful. There's no significant road bumps in this report that I haven't already discussed with you. I stick by my projection of the fund balance usage. Sales tax came in, healthier than expected. We prepared you we prepared you to have a $1.5 to $3 million deficit. And at the end of the day, we ended up with $1 million surplus. So it just goes to show you can put all your eggs in whatever basket you want, and it's going to be what it's going to be. We more than some counties are going to benefit from the online sales tax. NISAC puts out a report of what those internet sales are. I had a conversation with Brian the other day because one of my concerns is that I don't know if they're comparing apples to apples. Because if you remember, before the Internet Sales Tax Act went into effect, some vendors on Amazon were collecting sales tax. Some weren't. And Amazon itself was being reported under a bookstore, not under online shopping. So I don't know, if you look at the online shopping category now, it's not necessarily apples to apples in my eyes because there's Amazon money in there now. It's not new money from Amazon because it was formerly reported as a bookseller. So it's not, even though it's new to that category, it's not necessarily new money. And I don't know that there's a way to really slice that out for you and give you a true measurement of what our growth is as a result of that. Because if I remember the report right, they're claiming our growth is around $680 some odd thousand in new sales tax revenue from the internet marketplace, which that's wonderful until you look at my report earlier in the packet that shows the sales tax intercept, if everything goes to AIM related payments, is going to be 618,000. So if we have $680,000 in new sales tax revenue and the governor's slicing 618 out of it as an intercept, that internet sales tax hasn't done anything for Washington County. So that's what I have.
That might have been the plan, Al. The other thing I wanted to say off of all that is there's also a possibility of 15% reconciliation where he took 20% away on some revenues. Of course, some he took none. But if there is a reconciliation and say it's only 10%, because if some got none and some got 20, maybe 10% is only the number, we don't know. But that will change all our numbers for year end too. So hopefully we're going to know by March 31st. And at that point, if that money does come back, I would hope we would restore money to where it got stolen from, when we robbed Peter to pay Paul. And that should help with our paving. And especially if our CHIPS money comes back, then we can roll that over. But we have no definite verbiage yet from the state on whether CHIPS, if you didn't use it, whether you can roll over all but 5% or if they just took it and kept it. We have no idea yet where that even went. So stay tuned. There's going to be a lot of things there. Dave Griffith.
Go ahead, Al. I'll let you.
follow up
I was
there.
just gonna say that Raise the Age is another good example of that because we did our projections with 0 in the Raise the Age number. And since then, we've gotten our plan approved. And it's gonna be somewhere between 0 and 127,000, which will go into the 2020 coffers. So, I mean, there are some things that happened, you know, for every bad thing I just told you, there is a handful of good things. I mean, it's not all bad news.
Well, there's a bad one on that, Al. There was 230,000 put in there for revenue, and that's not coming.
But it also
there
wasn't,
is-
but it also
there's
wasn't part of
always some
our, it also wasn't part of our projection though, so.
Yeah, and then the other one is Tony Jordan has some money coming for bail reform and things that we didn't foresee. That was never even expected coming, up to a
And
possible 193,000, but we don't know what we actually qualify for. 193 is the most we could get. We just don't know what the qualifications are, so stay tuned on that. I'm sure that'll come to us through public safety.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you'll hear more about that at public safety. So. Sorry, Mr. Griffin.
You're okay. It's appreciated. Al, I had a question in regards to the governor's been talking a lot about the Airbnb tax that he wants to get into the budget. You know, how does that affect us, you know, as our agreement goes with Airbnb?
Right. So the good news there is if what he's talking about is an imposed sales tax.
Yeah.
So that would actually help Washington County because right now we're not getting sales tax, we're getting a voluntary occupancy tax.
Okay.
So if he imposed a sales tax, we would then get our 3% of that tax and we would still get our 4% voluntary agreement occupancy tax. We would get both.
So basically it'd be 11% on the person staying in an
Yes, sir.
Airbnb. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I'm not so sure that voluntary tax will continue, number one.
That's the question.
And remember, because the word voluntary is in it, and remember that if it converts to sales tax, right now he can intercept 0 of what we're getting. And when it converts to sales tax, there'll be more to intercept.
Thanks, Roger. That's what I was looking for.
That was a nice rosy picture you just gave. Sue Clary.
Al, thank you for all this information. It's a lot to digest and look at and think about, whether it be county or whether it be town. Interesting, you're talking about the reconciliation. So immediately my head goes to the 26,000 that the town of Salem didn't get for the dissolution. And you would put that back towards the 2020 budget or bring it forward as revenue? Question number one. And then the other thing is, when we did the hazard pay, does it look like we're going to be reimbursed for that? No.
I'm not seeing anything that shows that that they've changed their mind on that at all.
Because that was what was it, like $680,000?
That's pretty close, yep.
Yeah. So that's a big number. And that was federal money?
It was going to be.
Yeah. And so that through this next package is not looking like it's part of it.
We haven't seen any FEMA guidance that shows that they've changed their mind about that hazard pay.
Yeah.
At least I haven't. I mean, Tim Hardy
I haven't
probably has a
either.
better handle on what, you know, those moving parts, but I haven't seen anything from their fiscal department.
Okay, thank you. Maybe I'll
But it-
call you on the dissolution money.
So the dissolution money that you didn't get was due in 2020, correct?
Exactly.
Right. So if they freed that up and your books were still open, you would put it in 2020. If your books are closed, then you would just put it in 21 and, it would, you know, it'd be it depends on where you are with your books.
They're closed. Thanks, Al.
Okay, anyone else?
So the last thing I have for you is a question. Like I said, the capital project report that I gave you was a full-on every project where we are. If you want that one to continue, I'm happy to do it. If you want a one-sheeter that takes all those as a summary, I'm happy to do that as well, or both. It's whatever you find useful. I'm more than happy to provide to you. But I think that going on as a regular monthly report is not a bad idea.
I think, Al, the one sheeter I think would be good, like from now till say September, and then when we're in budget, bring out the full scale report again, and then again next February, bring it out again to show us where we're at. I think the one sheeter is important every time, but I think the in-depth is really good right at budget time, and I think it's really good right now at the start of the new year to see where we're at.
Right, so 2 semi-annual reports and then a monthly summary.
That's what I'd like. I don't know how anyone else feels on that. Dana half gave it a thumbs up, so it must be okay.
Well, and I think that it really does get confusing when we talk about capital projects and capital plans. Sometimes we mix those two together as they're one conversation.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, so now we're on to the budget amendments. So resolution D, in fact, B, C, D, and E are all carryovers of unspent stimulus funds. So B is family assistance. I'll move it. Moved by Dave, is there a second? Can't
Want
see
them up
anybody.
there or not? It's too confusing.
I just need somebody to second it. Make some noise.
Second.
Second by Sue Clary. Any discussion on that? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Okay. C is subcontractor for DSS. We're increasing that and their money, $7,423. I'll move it. Moved by Dave. I need a second.
Second,
Second from somebody. Kathy.
Cassie.
Good to hear you, Kathy.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions on that? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. D is carryover of unspent CARES funding, $259,579. So moved by Dave, second by John
Second.
Rozell. Is there any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. And E is a carryover of $30,000 in foster care expense.
Move it.
Moved by Cassie, is there a second? Second. Second, Sue, John, Dave. Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. Okay. F is, where are we at here? That's the next one on our list. This is the Mercer funding for the Church Street Bridge.
Move
The
it.
motion on that.
Move it.
Moved by Cassie, is there a second?
Second.
Brian? Jay Scully, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay. G is authorize acceptance of the grant from the Lake Champlain Basin Program. Is there a motion to move that? So moved by Dave O'Brien, second.
Second.
Second by Jay Scully and Cassie. Is there any discussion at all?
Brian,
Yes, go ahead, Dana.
maybe Dave can answer this. Dave, this is only for areas of the Champlain Canal that flow north to Lake Champlain, is that correct? Because I think around State Route 196 in Kingsbury is where it flows both ways. So if it flows towards the Hudson River, is that not eligible?
I'm not sure it's just for these areas, this grant is the eroding culvert on Mud Brook.
Right, but they
I can
talk
talk
about
on that.
tributaries of the Champlain Canal,
As well.
but not all of it flows towards Lake
Oh, is
Champlain.
it Deb? Okay, go ahead, Deb.
So this is the Lake Champlain Basin, so anything that flows into Lake Champlain goes into it, not necessarily the canal. We also have grants that we've applied for, or maybe we haven't, we're working on them, for the Hudson River watershed area. So I believe that's where that would fall in.
Okay.
Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Carried. And resolution H is unallocable insurance. And this, basically insurance is higher because of a car accident we had, and it's drove up all our costs, and it's gonna be in other places too, and we'll attack that more throughout the year. But this is the one we need to change to general fund today. I need a motion to move this. So moved by Dave O'Brien. Is there a second?
Second.
James Griffith. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Dana has discussion.
There's a couple people.
Go ahead, Dana.
Brian, this is almost a 5% increase from last year, but you explained why. My question is, our insurance is so some years we get a reciprocal back. That would not show up underneath the expense part of the budget. Is there a revenue that shows what we get for the reciprocal back?
Yes,
That's a good question. Is that now a question?
yes. There's a revenue line in general fund when we get those monies back.
All right, thank you.
And then, also, so the big increase was, the car from the wreck where the sheriff, deputy, that was our biggest one. The other one, cybersecurity, we expected it to go up 6 or 8%. It was double that. So, you know, just some things you just can't calculate that close. I don't know.
Somebody's gonna open.
Someone's got an open mic and it's crossing over and we can't hear some of this stuff, so could someone please mute themselves?
I guess we're better now. So that's where it's at. There could be more of these. So just letting you know, this is the first one. And you're right, Dana, if we can see that there's money coming in, we could use that to cover it instead of contingency in the future. But it's according to when that payment comes in. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, resolution I, information technology, and this was just discussed the other day. This is to do with the licenses on the phones and the soft phones.
Move it, Brian.
Moved by James Griffith. Is there a second? Dave O'Brien. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. And then J is intermunicipal agreement between the town of Kingsbury and the Washington County Sewer District. Do I have a motion to move that? So moved. Moved by Dave O'Brien. Is there a second? Second by Leslie Losa. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay. So now I think Matt Jones is on and is gonna talk about the bids that came in on the Burgoyne, school roof. Yes, no, maybe? I don't see him.
He's there.
Hang on, give me a minute here. I just had somebody come in. I gotta get him out of here.
Yeah, throw him out.
Can you go back and, do you have anything else or is this the last thing?
It's the last thing that we have to do before we can get on to the next thing, if that's what you mean.
Can you come back to me in like 10 minutes?
Yeah, I'll go to
5
Laura
minutes.
Oswald.
Thank you.
Hi, Laura.
Hello.
So we're gonna let you explain what we're doing with our grant money for our infrastructure and our internet system, the mapping, whatever. Go ahead.
So, as we discussed in ag planning, we're all aware that through the governor's Broadband for All program, that the notion that we are 99% covered by high-speed internet throughout the county is likely to be inaccurate. We also do know that it appears that there's going to be increased revenue through grant funding available to continue to help build out high-speed internet. But the only way that we are going to be in a position to start applying for those funds or to encourage providers to apply for those funds is if we understand specifically where we do and do not have internet. So the proposal essentially is twofold. The ECC Technologies, which we worked with in 2015, would literally send cars driving up and down the roads, looking at each pole and the markers that are on the poles that indicate what kind of technology is strong on the poles. The reason for that is because companies like Verizon and Spectrum will not give us the data. So the only way that we have of identifying is to physically look at the poles. Some of the other companies like Slick, Hudson Valley Wireless will provide the data, so that's easy to map, but Spectrum and Verizon are going to be the two that are a little bit harder to identify. So half of the project would actually be doing the pole identification. The second half of the project is going to be to set up an online survey that would also be available by paper, because obviously not everybody has internet, that will do two things. It will both do an actual speed test so that anybody who currently does have internet, we can determine whether they're actually meeting the speed thresholds that are required for it to be considered high-speed internet. And it will also help to verify the physical inventory of what's on the pole. So at the end of the day, what they will provide is a report that is a map of where existing infrastructure is, and also identify groups or areas that are contiguous to one of the providers, and basically provide a recommendation that says, okay, we've got a group of homes in this area that's near Spectrum or near Slick or near Verizon, whatever it might be, and then use that to either approach the providers to say, look, it wouldn't be too expensive for you to continue service into this areas, or for us to use that information to go seek broadband funding. So the total cost of the project is $30,000. Lake George, Lake Champlain Regional Planning Board will be able to fund $15,000 of that through some federal funding that they have. The rule of that funding, however, is that the actual contract between ECC, it would have to be between ECC and Lake George, Lake Champlain. We would then have to have a contract with Lake George Champlain as well, so that we funded them the $15,000, and then the entire cost for the project would be remitted by Lake George directly to ECC. So what we're basically looking for is approval to do a budget amendment for $15,000 in county funds. We would also need approval to do a procurement waiver, because we would need to be able to execute a contract with Lake George, Lake Champlain in order to be able to remit half of the project cost to them. Any questions?
Okay, so, yeah, the 15,000 is coming from somewhere within your budget, or is that something we have to find?
It's something that we have to find. I do not have the budget for it.
So we'll have that for the big meeting on Friday. And we need a waiver for procurement on our end, because we're going directly to Lake Champlain, and they will do the actual procurement.
Correct.
Okay, so first of all, I need a motion to waive the procurement policy for this.
So moved.
Okay, moved by James, second by Dave. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Oh.
Opposed? I think it's carried. I think everyone was in favor.
You got quick.
Alan, you had a question?
We can get a resolution drafted in time to go out in the packet tomorrow, so.
Yes. So I think Sue Cleary had a question first. Go ahead,
Thank
Sue.
you. Thank you, Chairman. Laura, on the map, It's what I'm finding in Salem is that there's a lot of Spectrum customers, okay? And they do have internet, but the internet is dysfunctional because of the lack of speed. Did you say the map would actually show some of that?
So part of the project will actually be to do a speed test.
Yeah.
So we'll have the results of those speed tests. I'm not sure if we would include all of that in an outright report or get the data separately, but we will have the data. So if somebody signed up to any one of the providers is told that their speed is X, and when it's measured, it's actually not, we will have that data.
Interesting. Yeah, thank you, because that's been an issue here in Salem, and it's to get the high-speed internet. The costs are so exorbitant that families can't afford to key into the higher amount for Spectrum.
Right. Now they will have to actually, once the connection, it'll be a website that's set up.
Yeah.
And then like an attachment to a survey. So they will have to go online, do the survey, and then the speed test will be done at the time. So again, the speed test is actually being performed. It's not a questionnaire or anything. It's as long as you are logged on to the system, they will do the speed test for you.
Excellent.
Or for whoever's filling out the survey.
Thank
So
you very
the
much.
big thing is gonna have to be at our town level, we're gonna have to let people know to make sure they get on and do that survey, so that speed test is done.
The piece of the
Yeah.
entire project that's really on us is going to be the communication to the public that we're doing this. So basically ECC will set up all the technology, they'll compile the results, but we're going to have to make a concerted effort, which, you know, we will certainly do through this office, as much outreach as possible, and then communicate to all the municipalities what's going on and when. You know, we'll invite the press to help put the word out, but we will do a concerted promotion effort to say, hey, this is our opportunity to really clearly identify what we have and what we don't have. And, you know, I'll tell you as part of doing this, I have gotten dozens of calls and emails from people who are in situations where, you know, they wanted to identify that they don't have broadband, but also in the town of Argyle, we were able to identify, I got communication from a number of residents that said, hey, you know, we've got internet on one end of the road, we've got it on the other, but there's half a dozen households in the middle who don't have it. So I contacted Spectrum and said, you know, you have an obligation to increase the number of passings. And that was a situation where within a week they got out there and got fiber strung to those households. So having the information and being able to provide it back to the service providers is a huge step in and of itself. If the service providers sort of say, it's too expensive for us to deliver this, that's when we start looking for opportunities for grant funding to just continue the build up. I don't expect that it will happen overnight, but we have to start with the information accurately of what we really have where.
Dana have?
Or two questions. You said that someone's going to be driving down the roads looking at all the poles. How many miles of roads are there in the county?
Well, so that's a good question. So the original proposal that we got from ECC estimated the road miles, and this is based on DOT numbers, at 1,462 miles. But because I was trying to get the cost of the proposal down as far as possible, I worked with Heather Weatherall and GIS because we have maps through the Broadband for All program that indicate where that service is going to be provided. So for example, we know exactly where SLIC is going to go. We know where Hudson Valley Wireless is going to go. So the town of Hebron, for example, is going to 100% be covered by SLIC. So it's not necessary to drive up and down every road because we can already get the data as to what's going there. So what we did was we identified all of the roads that were not named in the Broadband for All program and estimated the road mileage, and it came out to be 1,200 miles. So that's what the cost of the proposal is based on. Even with that 1,200 miles, they will still be crisscrossing across other roads. Largely that was done so that I could get the cost of the proposal down. I would expect that they're actually going to be driving more than the 1,200 miles, but the proposal was based on that number.
Also, what is the definition of high speed? Is it 25 megabits per second?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else? Okay, so I need a resolution to move that $15,000 to pay that to the Lake George, Lake Champlain region, and we'll come up with where it's coming from between now and tomorrow. So it's out in your packet if we can. And in that resolution, we'll have to include that the chairman has the ability to sign that.
Okay.
So I need a motion. Got it from Sue Clary,
Move it.
Second.
second by Cassie.
We just thought you had a motion already, but it doesn't matter.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. Okay. Now, Matt Jones, have you thrown out whoever's in your office yet?
That's Sheriff.
Yeah, we can go there, yeah. Okay, so we were gonna report out on, Sheriff talking about the money that, breakage he had to take care of his positions, and after we've reviewed that, and, Sergeant Leclerc, if I got it right, said his title, sent me the information that showed all the differences of the money, and I agree that, the money is available. And going forward, next year's budget, the effect should be only what the cost is in the contract. So I think we're good to go there. So that's just the update. Everything that we did is already moved forward, and it's not coming out of finance. That'll come right from public safety. So I think we're all set, unless there's anything Sheriff would like to add.
No, thank you. I think we're even now for my 100-page PowerPoint.
There you go. Yeah, that's a few minutes of my life I'll never get back, won't it? Okay, Matt Jones.
Sorry about that, guys. We just, been waiting 2 days for somebody to come in about the elevator, and sure enough, they come in the middle of the meeting. So our roof bids came in last week. We have, winning bidder is Titan Roofing, Inc. They're a pretty reputable company. Their bid was $717,900. One option that was offered in the bid was an extended 5-year warranty. That would take it from 25 to 30 years, which, that's the end of these roof cycles. Rubber roofs is around 30 years, so it would give us another 5 years. I don't necessarily recommend it. 24,000 is kind of unknown for 25 years from now, if you know what I mean. So to me, it's just a little bit of a gamble. I don't know if I would suggest it or not. But I'd like to carry forward with the roof project, and we're at finance now, so I guess we're gonna be leaning on Brian and how we're funding it and all that. If you have any questions on the bids, I can answer them.
How can you give us how close the other ones were?
Yep. The next one was 744,900. Then there was a 748,896. Then there was 847,000, and then $924,811. I can say the highest one was probably bid on Google Earth. I don't know if they were here and actually looked at it. They probably Google Earth the building, did a square footage, and threw a price out here in hopes to pay dirt. They're all semi-local companies. They're all within the Albany area, Glens Falls area. So I don't know, there's a couple things in the bid. Also, it's more information for me. It's a square footage for repairing. As we pull off the roof, if the Tectum deck is, needs repairing, it's a $35 a square foot. If the wood deck needs repairing, it's $10 a square foot. But in the 717,900 number, we have a 30,000 built-in variance for that. So that would cover without us, you know, having to do change orders, you know, last minute and try to get it all approved. That gives us the room to fix that. I really think probably we'll get a little bit less than the 717,900 when we're done. I don't think we'll eat all the way into the 30,000 that we put in the bid.
Okay. So first, we're gonna need a motion to accept a bid of $717,900. I got a move by John Rozell, second by Dave O'Brien. Is there any other discussion on that? Okay. The second thing I wanted to make sure I brought to you, Matt, was the 19th.
Dana has got his hand up.
Go ahead, Dana.
Where is this vendor located?
This vendor has, in Albany, and then just over in the Massachusetts border, they have multiple shops that are in the area. I believe they have one in Plattsburgh too.
And what's the difference between that and the next bid?
744,900. I believe that company's in Glens Falls. And then Monahan Laughlin, which is up the street, was 847,000.
All right, thank you.
Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Good call. Opposed, carried. Okay, the other thing, Matt, I didn't want you to forget to bring up the public health.
The architectural survey, we talked about this a couple of months ago. It's what needed to be done to move forward with moving the public health department over to Burgoyne. It's a bit of a lengthy process. We had talked about it, almost approved it. We didn't go through the right process though. I can't remember exactly. So we're bringing it back to finance just so we didn't skip a step. And we'd like to move forward with hiring an engineering firm to do that.
And what was the cost on that? Remind us, Matt?
It was 19,000.
19,000, okay.
Yep. And we had agreed I don't remember if it was finance or government ops.
GovOps moved it here, I believe.
Moved it here, and what happened is we forgot to bring it to finance. We moved it to finance and we didn't bring it to finance last meeting. So here we are.
Okay, and so the other question I got, with the pandemic and everything, this will still be going forward. That's not slowing this down from what we hear, right?
No, I talked to public health and they're good as long, it's gonna take a little bit of time to get this done anyways, but they didn't see any reason why I should slow down at this point. They thought that we should keep moving forward.
These can coexist while the roof's going on, the whole bit?
Yeah, this won't affect. This is a study. This is a survey just to tell us what we need to do to, improve the building or if we need to be able to move public health there.
Okay, next.
Would this be funded out of the capital plan under the Burgoyne campus upgrades for the public health move?
We had agreed, I would love it to be funded out of that, but we had agreed in the last meeting, I think it was gonna try to bring it out of my running budget. That was what we had agreed. Now, whether if you want to track the costs out of capital, we could do it out of that and then reimburse it from my budget. That'd be, I know Al's got his hand up and I believe.
Yeah, I had a comment, so I saw Al's hand up and I'll defer to him for sure.
Go ahead, Al.
It would be my preference that we do a budget amendment in the project to take it out of the project contingency and fund it in the project. Now, if you want to take money from Matt's budget and send it out to the project, you could do that, but I don't see any reason why you can't tap that 986 in the project and just make it go.
Okay, and when you see coming up in the bonding, and one of the part of the discussion is gonna be just the roof, or if we had a couple of those other things in, and this could be one of them. Just to make sure they're all under the same project. Dana Half, you had a question.
I don't remember if the Burgoyne School has an emergency generator, but doesn't public health have some very sensitive refrigerators?
Yeah, and it does have an emergency generator that we purchased with the building. That's, I think out of my budget last year, we built it out to cover and be prepared for the nurses move for the sensitive equipment.
Dan Shaw.
Yeah, I missed that meeting, I guess. The 19,000 is a study, correct? And it's gonna do what? What is this $19,000 study doing?
It's a survey that's required by the state as part of the step of moving public health to another building that would be certified for public health. Obviously, their operations have bringing patients in and everything else. So it's kind of like a code upgrade, to make it simple. They're going to come in and say, this is not up to code. This bathroom needs to be this or this, or it is up to date, and you're okay to move. But it is a step required by the state and in the process of moving them.
So this is basically going to help with the application of moving them over there. So my question, I guess, is in likelihood, in your experience and background knowledge, do you feel there's going to be another relatively large cost to move them in there from what this study is going to tell us?
I don't think there's going to be any large single item cost. I think it's going to be probably a bunch of small items. And in the capital project, we have for 2021, I believe, we have a Burgoyne upgrade in there. I believe it was 100,000, and I think it's funded. That's to start covering these small projects that are identified by this survey.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So basically, the way that was the last question was worded, this is actually mandatory to move public health there. This is it's not a step we can skip.
It is not a step, but we can skip, no.
It has to happen.
Yes.
Okay. So, Sue Clary.
It seems like we would need this sooner than later. And Matt, I know that you've been working hard at the vaccination site and setting up Burgoyne Avenue. It was interesting as I was walking through there during that. Now, do they have like ventilation there for public health? Does that work? How does that work?
In fact, we just finished up one of the old air handlers that Hudson Falls School District had decommissioned. We got it back in commission, and that's part of it. There is another one that we're in the process of working on. It's exactly what you're talking about. It's the ventilation. It's they're going to look at all that. And there's things that I know from my experience that I've already identified that we are in the process of working on already. So hopefully we'll have them done before the survey,
Matt, I want to thank you in the buildings and grounds. I know you've been one of the underlying departments that have made that area be successful with the vaccination distribution. I also like the $30,000 change order thing in the last bid, the one that you just talked about. That's so important because those change orders can make a project change in a big way. So that was a good part in that bid. I think we got to get public health in there as ASAP. So I'd like to move this along. Thank you.
Okay, so motion by Sue Cleary. Is there a second? Dave and Lester, Don, John. Any more discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Okay. Now we're going back to Al. Now we're going to discuss the bond issuance unless you wanted to go to the DEC stuff at the Shushin site first.
No, while we're talking about Burgoyne, we might as well take care of the funding part of it.
Okay.
So basically what I need from the board is we had discussed going and getting debt to pay for the roof. And the original estimate was $1 million. So in order to get a bonding resolution from our bonding attorney, now that we know the actual number, I need to know how the board wants to proceed. So you basically have two options. Well, you technically have three. You can borrow no money and fund it out of contingency and have no money left. You can fund just the amount of the roof, which is the 717,900. Or you can take the roof, the 19,000 for the study, the 50,000 for the parking lot, and the $100,000 in the upgrades for the building, bundle all that together and come up with right around 886. So say 900,000. So you can borrow just a 717. You can borrow 900,000 and make the scope a little bit broader to encompass all of the things that need to be done to finish Burgoyne, or you can borrow zero. So those, I kind of need to know how the board wants to proceed. John
Okay,
Rizzo.
so go ahead, John.
Now, we discussed this before with the low interest rates and everything. We thought this would be a good time to do the bond issue.
Yes.
And we're still under the $1 million, so it's a lot of money, but I guess now's the time to do it with the 900 and cover everything, my opinion.
So if John made a motion to borrow the 900,000, I seconded it.
Is that a motion, John? Josh made your motion, Meg, second. Any more discussion on that? Al Nolat.
One more piece of the puzzle. 10 years or 15 years?
10.
That's what we had discussed. I just want to make sure.
Mr. Half.
What is the interest rate?
Their estimate is about 1.65, but we're hoping that, if you remember last year when we went to market, we couldn't have gone to market at a worse day. We literally went like 2 days after the COVID shutdown. And what was anticipated to be a 0.75% came in at 2.75%. We're hoping that this time we can get ahead of the market a little bit, because I don't know if the current stimulus package passes at the federal level, that might have some reactions negatively in the market. So I'm hoping that this thing is going to be timed well enough that 1.65 is a real rate. I've seen NICLAS rates and bank rates are starting to creep up. So I wouldn't be surprised to see this closer to 1.8 and possibly even 2, but it's still going to be better. And our prediction is it's still going to be lower interest than if we waited 2 years from now.
But that interest changes annually on the amount still owed, right?
Nope, this will be long-term. It'll be locked in.
Okay.
Okay, Al, one other question. Today, really, timing is of the essence, because in order to have this ready for the February, because it has to be all done at the February meeting for everything to go out and get bonded by the March date. So basically, if we vote for this today, this sets this forward for our Friday meeting, right?
So when we finish this meeting, I will send a request to bond counsel to draft a resolution. It won't be in your packet tomorrow, but you will see it Friday at the full board meeting.
Okay, so the repercussion is if this gets voted down at the Friday meeting, we're still out a certain amount of dollars for doing all that work.
Yes,
And that is an estimate of how much money?
a couple grand.
Okay. Just letting everybody know that this is kind of where we're at today. It's not the final decision, but in some way it is. So, okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Very good. Okay, Al, the next was the DEC lien on the Sushin property where we have to put a pole or something.
Okay, so the good news is I've been chomping at the bit trying to get numbers from the EPA. And at 11:36 a.m., which was 9 short minutes ago, I got the email back. So just a reminder, excuse me, we have 6 properties owned by the same property owner. One of them is the property that we want to put the pole on to do the Shushin Bridge construction. So we had talked about going through and exercising our right to file deed to those properties. In that process, we discovered that 2 of the 6 properties have EPA liens on them. So what we know is the project, EPA came in and cleaned the project, the 2 properties up. What we didn't know is to the extent of the cleanup. So I've been working with them for almost a month now. And finally today, after a 45-minute phone call, I got an email back. They're estimating that the 2 properties together is going to be about 257,000, the lien amounts. It's 132 and 125 are the lien amounts. So 2 of the properties, one of them being the one in Shushin, have federal EPA liens on them. So now, and Roger can jump in whenever he's comfortable, now is a trigger point for us because you have to decide, A, do you still want to take them? And B, are we going to do anything about the liens? Because we don't have to. So there's discussion that needs to happen now on how you want to proceed with the enforcement, if at all.
Yeah, I'd like to hear Roger explain how this EPA lien works, and we probably don't have to worry about whether we pay that lien or not, because I guess it can go to the new owner. That would be a discussion for another day when we're going to auction maybe, but as far as taking the property for the pole, I guess we need to hear about that right now. Go ahead,
Well,
Roger.
do these apply to there's multiple properties, but only one that has the pole. So
There's one pole property, but unfortunately the pole property is one of the 2 contaminated properties.
which one? Do you know whether it's 1 or 2?
He didn't tell me which one is 1 and which one is 2.
But they're close enough, so it doesn't really matter
They're
for,
close
for
enough
this
that
discussion.
Right.
Right. So the lien will have to be satisfied. My experience with the EPA in the past is that they've objected to sale and they've wanted a cut of the action when we've tried to sell these things. And honestly, we haven't sold too many of them because nobody wants to buy them with EPA liens on them. So the best course of action, in my opinion, is to negotiate with them for a percentage of what we get. Since it's an auction and a pure arm's length transaction, and I don't care if they're watching this, they might decide to sell for just a percentage of what we get. So or take the first X amount of dollars and let us keep the rest. So that would be the best way to do it. And then you can market them as being lien free because we're going to pay the liens off at the end. The liens are coming off no matter what. Either if I'm buying it, I'm going to deduct that cost of doing business from my bid. But this might open up another avenue if we can reconcile them ahead of time. The other thing is we're going to have to ask them if there's what's called a no further action letter out there, because this is how much they've spent to date. This isn't how much they might consider spending should somebody else own it. And because it's never their money in the end. So we'd want to see what's a no further action letter so that we're sure when we take title to it that they say, well, yeah, there's 150,000 out there. But now that we've got somebody with bucks, there's a few other things we'd like to do.
Okay, so now can we move this to the full board and you have all those answers for us by the time we, would vote on this on that Friday meeting?
I can't tell you whether we'll have all those answers by the Friday meeting.
But I'm not sure we want to move before we have those answers, right?
I would think so.
Okay, Al?
But just a reminder, there's no board action necessary here. There's no resolution of the board required. I'm getting a consensus of the board on how you want to go forward, because if I foreclose, I'm putting the county on the hook for certain liabilities. So there's there's no resolution of the board required. This is all my action.
Right, so you want that information from Roger before you act too, then?
So what I want from the board,
he wants to make sure that you're not going to hang him out to dry if he takes this. There's a lien there.
Right.
I'll be more blunt than he is.
So Al, so you can predict the future. Can I assume that based upon your experience and your knowledge that if we did sell all those 7 properties at auction, we would not realize $257,000?
Plus the 100 and whatever, I mean, you've got the lien money that's owed and you've got our tax money that's owed. It's a significant amount combined. No, we
Okay.
would not recoup that. No, we would not probably recoup that money.
Okay, and the question to Deb is, if we did not do this and you could not move that pole and you had to do what you had to do at the existing bridge, in the worst case scenario, how much additional would it cost us to do that?
Well, you remember that we're still moving forward with the eminent domain to put the pole there, correct?
That's a yes. Are you asking me? Who are you asking?
No, we're all aware of that.
Okay.
Okay, so, so if this doesn't work out for us, we're moving forward with putting the pole there anyway through our other process.
Would we end up paying the lien through eminent domain? That's a Roger
No.
question.
I don't
No,
think so.
No, we wouldn't. Because we
Okay.
aren't taking title, and it's only temporary besides.
Yeah,
So
'cause
we
were
aren't,
only
we aren't gonna be in the chain of title like we would if we become a deeded owner to the property. It's a completely
But we
different
have-
situation.
Right, and the enforcement conversation is kind of separate and apart from the pole conversation, because if you decide not to take it now and do eminent domain for the pole, this property still continues to accrue taxes and the debt continues to grow bigger. At some point, we have to do something. We can't continue to just let it rack up taxes.
So I think we're waiting for, Roger's final say on this. Go ahead, Sue.
There's 6 properties and
Yep.
the one is in Shushan that is the, that what the EPA was involved. Is the other one in the hamlet of Salem?
It's over by Salem Artworks, so
That's what I thought. So these properties have been sitting there stagnant for how many years?
2012,
And we're not gaining any money from them at all.
no.
And with the market going up the way it is, okay, those properties could actually bring in more than, probably not, we won't get it all back, but we should get most of it back. What's the total amount owed that they owe us?
I don't have it in front of me, but my memory is around 217.
Yeah.
What's the total
So
later?
if we don't act, Al, if we don't act, okay, it's just gonna sit there and do the same thing, like on a treadmill and we don't get off.
Yes. And the debt
So-
continues to get bigger and it continues to chip away at your fund balance.
Yeah, and no, there's no good outcome from it because these properties are, they're on the Battenkill. There are areas that they're next to Salem Artworks. I know there's buyers out there. So from a town point of view and a county point of view, being stagnant doesn't help anybody.
And-
So
and
how
as
do
a-
we do this at the worst so that we don't hurt ourselves, do harm? Because we're doing harm both ways. We'll do harm both ways.
So as the enforcement officer,
Yeah,
we have to pick one of 2 paths. We
Yeah.
have to stop the bleeding. So
right.
we either have to take them and be done, or we have to 1138 them and get them off the rolls and make the bleeding stop. The second obviously is not my preference, because when we 1138 it, now the towns, villages, and schools are all going to get charged back and everything too. So nobody wins in that situation. And if we take the risk and take them, and normally I'm a 0 risk guy, but at some point you have to do something.
Right.
And at least, I mean, if we're owed 217 and we get 17, it's 17 more than I had yesterday, and we can start getting them back on the rolls. And even the community, it seems, would want something to happen with those properties.
Absolutely.
That's just my 2 cents.
Mine too. I agree with
I
you.
don't think there's anybody opposed to Al doing whatever he has to do. Is there any objection to that? I guess that's my first question. Okay, day and a half.
Al, the amount of money is owed. I think about 40% of that is interest and penalties. So it's not money that the county is out making other people whole.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
It's interest and penalties we didn't get. So I think that 200,000 really is not the number we should be thinking about trying to recoup.
Okay.
So it's 100,000 less than the 574 I see. Or 470.
Did I answer Matt's question? Or did you need more on that, Matt?
Well, I'm just trying to figure out what our potential exposure here is. I understand we have to stop the bleeding, but other than eminent domain, if we take them, we're in the chain of title and we're on the hook for the 257, aren't we?
Well, I
Yes.
think that's where Roger's gonna see what he can negotiate.
Well, yes, the short answer is yes, okay? The bigger answer is, there's two other questions though you have to ask yourself. Can you recoup that from a buyer? Okay? And number two, is there anything else that needs to be done? Is that the final number? And so that's why we have to go to them and say, well, that's how much you spent so far. That's what the liens are. But again, what they do is they clean it up to a certain standard, and then if they can't find anybody, they do the same thing we want to do. They stop the bleeding. And then if some nice unsuspecting person comes along, they will say, aha, there are a few more things that need to be done there. So we want to make sure there's no aha lurking in our future.
And you'll update us when this comes up at the board meeting.
Right, and that's simply what it is, because the power rests with Al. Like I said, I just think he doesn't want to go charge it up the hill and look behind him and see an empty field.
Go ahead, Al.
Well, one of the things I guess I want to ask Roger is, we don't have to pay the liens.
No, but if we're in the chain of title for even a second, then we're one of the potentially responsible parties. And therefore, what they do is they get all the potentially responsible parties that they can find. This is what happened to us in Whitehall. And they say, now, everybody get out your checkbooks. And what happened to us in Whitehall was, with a much lesser amount, parenthetically, was the only guy that had a checkbook in his pocket was us. So we bore the vast amount of that cleanup. So we want to make sure that that if we're going to be on the hook for a number, and we have to think of it as we could potentially be on the hook for that entire number, then that has to be an acceptable number to us, and we have to make sure that there's no more. Now, if there's more, that may still be, and we can determine what that amount is, we might still be willing to go forward.
Right, because I want to talk to you about what EPA told me this morning, just.
Okay.
And because we've sold properties at auction before with state and federal liens on them. That wouldn't be a first time.
No, but most of those liens have not been for environmental cleanup purposes, because we've never gotten in the chain of title to begin with.
Sure.
Those are, a sales tax lien is a sales tax lien is a sales tax lien. You know exactly what it is. There's nothing further to do with it. In this case, and maybe you know something I don't, but in this case, there's always two questions with these: how much, and is there anything more I have to do, or somebody will have to do?
You cut out a lot of bidders as soon as there's something of this magnitude on it. So if we could take care of this before it went to auction, it would make a lot more bidders involved. So
yeah, I'm not a realtor, but I think it'd make it more marketable to say, here it comes without the liens, and we'll satisfy the liens out of the proceeds. Or we could sell it either way and see which way we do better.
And I guess part of me is willing to take $1 for the property if it makes it go away and get back on the roll. So there's, do you spend 137 to make 90, or do you spend 0 to make $1? I don't know which is better.
Yeah, and I don't either, because this could be, again, one of those places where we sell it. The person, gives us 50 cents on the dollar and then proceeds to not pay the taxes when they realize what they got into, and then we're back. You can't tell the future. All you can do is make the best deal you can for us, because that's my job at least. And then go forward based on that and see what the risks are. I mean, you're taking a risk anytime you get in a chain of title. We've had that discussion every year. We've had a tax sale since I've been here.
And one thing that we would do differently with this one, at least in my opinion, I would be extremely transparent right up front. If this thing goes to auction, I would offer up everything that we know right up front. So
absolutely.
We usually sell these things buyer beware, but I would be extremely transparent with this one and say, here, this is what we know. So they would bid with full confidence at that point.
Right.
Ken Roselle.
Is this slowing you up at all, Deb, by doing that? When's it gonna get to a point where it's slowing you up on the bridge?
Well, I checked with the RK Height this morning, and we've got 4 to 5 weeks left of going down our path. I would prefer that this happen because then it'll probably cost us less because it won't be a temporary pole putting over there. It'll be a permanent. So I would hope that this would move forward quicker than the 4 to 5 weeks. But I really have no control in how fast stuff moves forward currently.
Yeah, I wouldn't bet on that.
I feel like John's idea, put the pole on. Go ahead, John.
Well, I'd continue on with the work with the bridge and argue about 50, 100 square foot of property after. This is getting to be ridiculous.
Well, Roger alluded earlier to that he hasn't heard any funding requests from this department for the construction of that bridge. And that's because when there's federal money involved, they will not give us authorization to proceed with construction until these are tied up. And that's because when they get into them, they've been burnt in the past. So there is no way that we will be able to even start before that. It just won't happen because of the federal aid money.
Max?
Deb, just for information purposes, if for some reason the circumstances where you could not put even a temporary pole over there, could you still replace the bridge?
They looked into that and they did not think that it would be feasible. Is it impossible? No, but I think that the construction cost, because the beams are so long that you would have to have the cranes on either side. Can you splice them? Yes, but then that sets the design back. So yeah, we could if we had to.
And you have no idea what that additional number would be, ballpark?
No.
Okay.
No.
And so now we're back to John Rosel's, we'd love to go ahead and just do it. But
Right.
You're saying because the federal money is involved, we really can't just go ahead and do it because they're not going to allow the funding to come through, right?
Right. Exactly.
So are we boiling down to eminent domain as our only option at this point, Deb?
Well, we're moving forward with eminent domain. I was hoping that this process would go faster, but
Okay,
we're moving forward with both to see who wins.
thank you.
Dan Shaw?
Yeah, this question is for Roger, and I don't want to get out in left field, but have we identified any owner or potential owner to this property?
Yeah, I don't know who the owners are, so getting in contact with them, it's tough.
My certified mail came back unsigned, so we know who he is and we know his mailing address and we know who it is. He just is unresponsive.
Yeah, we know his lawyer.
So if we could locate this person, a simple contract and for a few bucks and get a permission slip from them, then we could move that pole, correct?
Sure. Absolutely.
Regardless of what liens are on it or anything else.
Correct.
At one time, there was a discussion that you were going to double down, I think, or was it you or Al was going to double down and see if you could actually contact the owner. Did that occur and you just couldn't go any further?
I've tried to contact him by mail, Dan. He's unresponsive.
Huh. Is he local or is he out of state?
He has a Cambridge mailing address.
Interesting. And Sue does not know this man or where if he lives there in Salem?
Dan?
Yes.
Yes, he's exactly what Al's saying, unresponsive. And it's not, I don't think it's deliberate. I think it's just the way it is.
He owes us 200 grand and owes the Fed 250 grand. I'd be unresponsive too.
Yeah, but if he was to take a few $1,000s right now to sign a piece of paper, we'd be, and he could still do what he wanted to do or owe what he wanted to owe. I'm just thinking that to me, of course, like you say, he's not logical and this is not making any sense to me, but I don't know what a good answer is to this. But getting back to Al, every year you do come to the board with a recommendation on what we should 1138. And now you're talking about the bleeding, stopping the bleeding on these properties. Is that something that we should be doing if we're not going to move ahead and make this sellable?
If we need to continue this conversation, even if it's not today, it needs to happen, because one of two things has to happen. We're either going to enforce or we're going to not. And if we're not, we need to stop the bleeding.
Thank you.
Chase Kelly.
Yeah, like Deb says over there, there's no way to operate those cranes without moving that line. If the bridge is gonna go forward, it's probably, the quicker is gonna be the eminent domain. To Al's argument to stop the bleeding, and Al and Roger maybe both can answer this. If we took them over, do we have to, if we can't get the lien negotiated down, Roger, we do have money set aside from selling stuff, don't we, Al, for cleaning up some stuff? Is it possible we could clean it up a lot cheaper than what the lien is? And then are we clear the lien on these properties, not knowing what the contamination is? I'm just throwing that out.
So if it was the desire of the board to tap that fund for this property, you could do that. You establish the reserve, you can tap the reserve. That's how it works. I don't know if you want to throw, 250 of your $390,000 at one property, but you could.
Oh,
I
I
just
want
didn't-
big project than that.
I just didn't know, what is the cleaning up? I mean, their estimate's 120 some thousand on each or whatever. I mean, is it really that costly to go in and clean them up if you took ownership? That's
Jay, that's actually the price of the cleanup that's already been done.
okay. I'm sorry. All right. Okay.
Yep.
I thought there was still some stuff there.
Well, that's what
the
Roger's
question.
right. That's what Roger's concern is that we know what we know, but we don't know what we don't know.
Okay.
And the problem is when you put a shovel in the ground, you can find all kinds of wonderful things. Sometimes it's buried treasure and sometimes it's not. And that's really the question. So that the number he gave you, the 250 something, that's what you're on the hook for that. That's
Okay.
coming out of somewhere unless we can get them to reduce it. But you still might have more. And that's the question. Sometimes they'll issue what's called a no further action letter, which says to the person who's involved, hey, we've done reasonable investigation and we don't think we're going to have anything else has to be done. Unless you're going to try to put a daycare in it or something like that. So, which is highly unlikely in this case. So that you can buy with some assurance then that they're not going to come back to you. Sometimes that amount represents, well, we did what we can do and what we really feel is financially prudent to do at this point, but there could be more. We just didn't think it was worth it. Now it might, because they didn't want to spend their money. They might think it's worth it to spend somebody else's money. I mean, poll aside, these are the same, the poll's kind of mixing things up here. These are the same discussions we have every time we have an 1138. Dan was right in that respect, that this is the same thing we do every time. And so the question is, do you want to let a 50 by whatever it was size parcel, drive the process on the whole thing, all 6 parcels with the liens of however many there are? Because, I guess your first question in terms of taking this property through taxes is, would you normally take it, but not for the poll, if not for the poll? And if you would, then you should go ahead and take it. And then that's just a benefit of, we'll have the poll problem solved by doing that. But if it's something that you wouldn't necessarily take absent the poll, then you're taking on a ton of liability for a small area that we could get through eminent domain for whatever we're going to pay.
Okay, day and a half.
Roger, I hear that this person is unresponsible or unresponsive to the United States postal system. Wants to prevent someone from knocking on his door,
right,
speaking to him. If he says, go away, then he's unresponsive. If he hears sounds inside and he's not answering the door, he's unresponsive. But I hear this every once in a while, they're unresponsive when nobody actually approached the person eyeball to eyeball and had a conversation. And now in the town of Moreau, the whole sewer district, a lot of people change their mind when somebody actually spoke to them. They ignored their mail. Is this the same situation where we're paralyzed because of the mailman?
No, there's nothing keeping anybody from contacting him directly if they know where he is.
Well, then maybe somebody can go find the guys. knock on his house 5 days in a row, 7 days in a row, but unresponsive. To me, this doesn't meet the definition.
Sue Clary.
Dana, maybe you and I should go. Anyways,
I offered that 2 months ago, Sue, and you didn't even reply.
no, and
Sue, I will go with you. Yes, yes. Tell me when.
okay. The other question is, what I'm asking is, the bridge is really important to the farmers in the area, Shushan, and being able to go back and forth across that bridge without having it be flagged again. It was flagged last year and was out for how long, Deb? 6 weeks?
6 weeks, I want to say.
I think it was 6 weeks. It becomes a real hardship, and the farmers are having a hard time already. And so now we're gonna have another Band-Aid put on the bridge this summer when they're gonna need that bridge to keep doing what they're doing. Also, the lakes, that bridge is what they get over to Denny Ushak, and how they do their economy in Shushan. It's not that much, but that bridge is really, really important. So to keep delaying it and putting Band-Aids and having the expenses go up due to, well, you gotta fix this or you gotta fix that and get it back on the thing, or that could be the 122,000 by the time you get done, and how it affects the economy. So do we have to look at all 6 properties? Can we just work on the one property and separate that away? And so it's not like this great big 6 property
This is amazing.
problem. Al, I don't know if it's a Roger question or an Al question. Do we have to do all 6 properties at once, or can we just look at the one?
That's part of the discussion I wanted to have today, Sue, is I have four unencumbered properties that we probably should just move forward on. There's only two of the 6 with liens. So the four unencumbered properties, we probably should just move forward on and be done with those. And then the conversation becomes about the 2 with the liens on them.
And that's still
Fortunately,
your
one of those is
decision
the
anyway.
I'm sorry, Roger?
Unfortunately, one of those is the poll, but yeah, there's nothing keeping you from doing the ones that don't have liens on it.
Correct.
Actually, there's
Those are
nothing
all
keeping you from
Al's
doing all of
decision
them.
anyway, right?
What, Brian?
Those are all Al's decision.
Yes.
You can take those 4 without us anyway.
All 6 are Al's decision.
Right. So it's just the decision you come up with as to whether Al is, should or shouldn't be is what we're waiting on. And by Friday, we should have a resolution on this one where we don't have to have a resolution. The whole situation should be resolved by Friday on whether Al's taking them or not.
Well, you keep talking about Friday, Brian. There's nothing coming to the board on Friday.
No, but I'm just saying, we need closure to know where to tell Deb how this is gonna happen. Either we get to something before eminent domain, or it's gonna be eminent domain, unless the guy answers his door and says, yeah, I'll take your check to get rid of 50 feet of property for a pole. Those are your 3 choices.
Well, basically, you either have the desire to roll the dice on this property, or you don't. And if you don't, we need to have a different discussion.
Right, but I think that, well, that's up to you because that's not our decision you just told us. So I think you and Roger just need to get together on that and go from there.
If I put the county on the hook for $500,000, then you guys need to come along for the ride.
Right. And so on Friday, we should be able to tell you that according to what Roger finds out. That's
But my
where
point
I'm
is,
at.
it's not on the agenda for Friday is my point, Brian.
It doesn't need to be on the agenda. If we ask Roger on Friday, did you come to a conclusion to where it's feasible to the county to go forward? And you say yes, then we can say, yes, we're behind you, Al, let's make it happen. There's no reason to wait. Max.
Al, have you had correspondence or contact at all with his attorney, either through the mail or by phone?
The only attorney that I'm aware of was his bankruptcy attorney, who I don't know if he still does or does not represent him.
All right, thank you.
Sue Clary.
I'm sorry. There's another issue here also, is that regarding public safety. for fire departments and for rescue squads to get back and forth that bridge, across that bridge is imperative. And so why we're sitting on this is beyond me.
Matt Hicks.
Who makes the decision whether to go forward or not go forward on eminent domain? The board or Al or Roger and Al or who?
It was already done.
Since you didn't pass your normal resolution at the beginning of the year regarding eminent domain, the full board would have to make the decision on eminent domain.
But we did that, correct, for the temporary easement?
Yes.
And that's the process that RK Height is going through right now.
Can that process be completed, Deb, according to them, in the time frame that you need it to be completed by?
It's going to take them, the latest estimate is 4 to 5 more weeks. So that's really pushing it, but.
That's why I said a timeline for Friday. Let Roger and Al get together, find out if it's, if it's way on the realm. Al's probably not gonna do it.
If what? What are they gonna tell us on Friday? What?
Roger will have had the discussion whether he can get the lien reduced or make an agreement with them, or where we're at in the chain of title, because all those things are up in the air according to discussions that Al's had with EPA and that Roger will have with their lawyer. EPA
One of the
lawyer.
good things that came out of this morning's phone call with the EPA is they gave me their attorney's contact information to give to Roger. So Roger has a point of contact now, at least. That's something more than we had.
I think we take it back up on Friday. That's where I'm at. And, because I think there's nothing more we can say until we hear. And maybe Roger won't have got back to the guy by Friday. Maybe the guy won't answer his phone, but I just think that until we hear from him, I think this is the quickest way. If Roger talks to the EPA guy, they make a deal or come to some decision as to where we are and the liability and if there's anything more there or not. I think if we know all that by Friday, we can say, we're behind you, go ahead and make it happen, and we're done. And if not, then we're still headed forward with the eminent domain. But I think we've discussed it as far as we can discuss it until we get to that point. Who have I got? Dan Shaw.
Yeah, Al originally started this conversation with he wanted the feeling of the supervisor. So I'm going to give him my feeling. And that is, if you don't have something in writing, I do not believe the county should take this property. If you have it in writing and satisfies everybody's concerns, fine. But I don't want to, or at least an email, something that confirms what protects us. Because I'm on that thought pattern of $500,000 is not worth it. And that we automatically ought to go right to the eminent domain. And I'm thinking we should do that now to speed things up. Then the timeline, you've started the process.
We've already gone there. We're doing the eminent domain. It's in the process, and it's going to take at least 5 weeks. That's where we're at.
Oh, okay. So 5 weeks time, it's over with.
Well, we don't know if it'll be over with, but we don't know if it'll be that much
The
closer.
majority of the board votes to take eminent domain, it's over with.
No, we already voted to do that. We've already voted to take that temporarily by eminent domain. That's why Deb is moving forward. We've already done all that. So that's been done. Day and a half.
You guys decided to do it by eminent domain, not me. Would somebody please text me this person's address? I'll put my money where my mouth is, or my mouth where my money is, however you say that. And I will attempt to find this person. I'm not going to wait on the mailman and have some red tape tell me that he was not responsive. I will go and I will find this person. Please, somebody send me his address.
You might scare him and we'll be in a bigger liability issue.
You don't know how to do it. You put a big sign on your car that says Publishers Clearinghouse Sweepstakes, and you hold balloons in your hand, and he will break the door down to answer you.
Well, you better come up with a different sign. You just blew your cover on that one.
That's brilliant.
So Dana, you'd be willing to go?
18-year-old car.
You're willing to go speak to the guy to let him know that we are willing to offer him a sum of money for a temporary easement for a pole. And I guess we're gonna let you negotiate what that number is. So that's where we're headed on this, right?
I know what the top number is. I'm not saying it here, but I know what
Okay.
it is. Everybody
But that's
knows.
what if you can get him, that's what you're gonna talk to him about.
Yes, and because I don't like eminent domain.
A temporary easement for the movement of a pole, a temporary. That's great.
Yes.
Well, the worst part is, we're probably gonna end up taking the property anyways. Why would you spend $17,000 on eminent domain? You could spend towards cleanup. But I think until Roger finds out if there's more underlying stuff, I think we're dead in the water anyway.
Right, but you don't want to conflate these things. I'm just talking about the poll.
Right.
Debbie, please,
Okay.
please send me his address.
Are we good?
Great.
Anything else anybody's got to come before the board? Anything we left out, Deb?
I don't believe so.
LOS?
Brian, we had talked about doing a resolution on the vacation time. Did you need anything out of this committee today?
Oh, that's right.
That Roger wrote this, that doesn't need to come here, I don't.
Right, I don't think that has to come here.
Okay. Just checking.
That was just from personnel right to the board, I think.
Okay.
Thanks for writing that, Roger.
Did he write
Okay.
that? Did he write that under protest or?
That's next time.
No, my vacation starts right now, though.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
Maybe we should call it compassionate leave.